Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Michelle Trissa and I'm an independent demonstrator with Stamping Up here in Australia. I'd just like to get started fairly quickly today, and we're going to be having a play with one of the products out of the mini catalogue. So I'm going to flip this camera over. Just a couple of things. Please, if you're watching me on YouTube or on Facebook, jump on, say hello, let me know your name, where you're from, and make sure that you've given Facebook and YouTube permission to use your name with StreamYards. And that way I know who's actually chatting with me today. So let me just flip this camera. Won't be 1 second. Okay, let me see if my camera is going to focus a little bit. I'm hoping so. If it's blurry, please let me know. I'm not quite sure what is the go here at the moment. Just let me give this a little bit of a wipe. I'm sorry, my hand is in the road there. Whoops. And see if that makes a difference. I hope so. So I hope you can see this clearly enough. As I said, my name is Michelle and I'm an independent demonstrator with Stamping Up. And today we're going to be looking at the Flowering Rain Boots bundle. So this is it in your mini catalogue. It's on page 30. Now, just to remember, when you're looking at the products in our catalogue, sometimes there is at least 2 or even 3 ordering numbers with this catalogue. So with this one, there is 2. So you've got the Flowering Rain Boots stamp set, and you'll find that there is a number here, 157689. If you use that, you're only ordering the stamp set. Just below that, you get a 10% discount if you order it as a bundle. So with the bundle, there's a different ordering number, 157691, and you get both the stamp set and the dies in that one together, and you get your 10% off. So that is a really good deal there. Then across over here, we have a third one, and that is the Rain Boots dies. So you can actually order the dies independently from the stamp set as well, and that's got a different order number as again, 157690. So just to help you to explain a little bit so it's not so confusing, if you want to get the bundle, which is the best deal to get, you want to use this number here, 157691. And here in Australia, to purchase this bundle, it's $87.25. So if you use my shop with me, michellejutrissa.stampitup.net, just remember Michelle is actually spelled with 1 L, a little bit different to the norm. You can use that number and order this from me. But that is only if you're here in Australia. So let's get started, because what I've decided to do today, we're going to do 3 different cards today. Well, they're the same card, but we're going to do, hi Linny, how are you? We're going to do 3 of the same card, but we're going to step it up each time. So here's our stamp set that we're using. And as I said, it does come with dies. Now, the dies don't come within your stamp set. It's just the way it comes in its own little plastic envelope. It's just the way I like to store them, so they're all together, so I don't have to search everywhere. So it does come, it's a photopolymer stamp set. So you will need to be using a foam mat. Now, the foam mat that I generally use under mine, you can use a piercing mat, but just be very aware if you've used it for piercing, it's going to leave indentations in your mat. So you do need to have like a newish type mat. I use the foam mat that comes within your Stamparatus. And what I have noticed is at the moment, this mat is on special in our clearance rack. So good time to grab a couple of spare ones if you like using this. It's only a very thin mat, but I find it is enough to do what we're wanting to do here. So we need to have our mat, because they are, as I said, they are photopolymer, and we're going to be using some of our dies. So I'm just going to take them out now and pop them to one side so they're ready to go. We don't need all the stamps and all the dies. And what we're going to be using today is the gum boots, the tulip flower heads, and the tulip leaves and stems. And we're going to be using the sentiment, live life in full bloom. So we're going to keep this fairly simple, but each card we're going to step it up. So let me show you the first card we're going to make. So this is our first card, and this is really a beginner's card. Everything, all you need to make this card is your stamps and your inks and paper. There's nothing more or any more simpler than that. So let's get started and make this one. Now, our dimensions that we need for our cardstock, I'm using the extra thick basic white cardstock, and it's 10.5 centimeters wide by 29.9, and I've scored it at 14.9 in the middle, and then folded and creased that with my bone folder. So let me get the piece of cardstock we're going to need for that one. So here it is. Going to pop that card just to one side. Don't need that piece anymore. Now just remember too, all the measurements and everything I will put up on my blog. So, and you will find the link for that underneath my YouTube video on YouTube. So here's my piece of cardstock. I've cut it at my 10.5 by my 29.9, and I've scored it at my 14.9, and I'm going to now fold that in half. Now when you fold these, you should always fold it, or when you score it, you're going to get like an indentation, like a valley on one side and a raised area on the other side. So what we're going to do is that raised area, which is going to give you, is like your bottom of your valley. So you've got like a valley and like a mountain, but it's slightly raised. We're going to put that raised section into the middle of our card and fold, lining up our edges, and then we're going to go across the top for that folded area with our bone folder to give us a nice crisp fold there. I am going to open this up again just to do my stamping. Now I've got my mat, and what you can do, and I don't have one, here we go. It's my trolley got a bit stuck. I'm just going to grab a piece of grid paper here. Now this is the small one that goes with the Stamparatus. Pop that away. Just to pop on top of that mat, just to protect it from any ink that we could get on there. So now we're going to start stamping. So we've got our paper, so all we need is our stamps and our ink. So this is our ink, and it's a smoky slate that I'm using, and we're going to stamp our rain boots in smoky slate. So I'm just going to tap very lightly and make sure I've got a good coverage of ink on my stamp. And what I'm going to do, when I did this one, I stamped my boots probably a little bit too close to the bottom, because I like to have things even to the top to the bottom. And I've got a little bit more white space here than I do at the bottom. So this time I'm going to stamp up a little bit higher, and maybe even a little bit more into the center of my card. Don't want to go up too high, but just a little bit higher. So that's there. You're always better off having a little bit of extra white space at the bottom of your card than you are at the top of your card. If you get too close to the bottom of your card, it tends to look like things are starting to fall off the bottom of your card. So I've just held that down for a couple of seconds just to let that ink make contact with my paper and saturate in. Now it's fairly dark at the moment, but that will lighten down. As you can see, it's quite a bit different. Same color, it just has to lighten up a little bit. So we'll close that ink pad, and now we're going to do our stems. So this is just a fairly easy and simple card, and really great for the beginner, the person who's just starting out in their card making journey. So I've got my stamp here, and again I'm just tapping fairly lightly, and now I'm just going to overlap the top of that just so slightly, and we're going to stamp down. So let's hope I've got that down far enough. It's a little bit hard to see sometimes without getting your head in the camera view. There we go, beautiful. So there's our stems and our leaves. Now with my original card, I did use polished pink, and this time I'm going to use fresh freesia. So this is one of the colors in our In Colors that came out last year, and our new year starts fairly soon in June. and these will stay for another year to go yet. So now I'm going to line this up with the top of my tulip head, and the beauty of the photopolymer stamps that you can actually see through the stamp and line that up fairly simply. Let that ink absorb and then stamp off, and there's our beautiful tulips there. So we only have one thing left to do, and that's to stamp our sentiment. So I'm using Memento Black here to stamp this in. This is also a water-based ink, and the Memento is probably my favourite black ink to use. So I'm just going to stamp that right there next to that. Just holding that down again for a couple of seconds just to let that blend into the cardstock. So there's our first card. That's simple. So that's a really great beginner's card, and I think it looks fantastic. Yes, Linny, Smoky Slate. Yep, it is Smoky Slate that I used. Okay, so let's go to our next card. So I've stepped this one up a little bit. So exactly the same layout, but grab this one here. So it's exactly the same layout, but this time I'm using the dies to cut out all my bits and pieces, and I've added a mat underneath my card front. So this has really just got one layer. So all this one is paper, stamps, and ink. And this one here, I've added a mat, and I've added the layers of the dies. So let me get the bits and pieces we need for that, and I'll tell you what measurements we're using for that one. Okay, so we have our card base, and that's exactly the same as what we had before, but this time I'm adding a mat, and that mat is also in my Fresh Freesia. This is the Designer Series paper, which is a 6x6 pack, and each pack has, I think it's 4 of each colour in a couple of different designs. And then I've got a piece of basic white cardstock, and this is not the thick one, this is just the regular basic white cardstock, and this is going to be for my card front. And then I need some extra pieces, which I've got over here, which we're going to do our stamping on. So I've just got 1/4 of a sheet of an A4 piece of cardstock. So I'm going to pop these to one side, and we're going to do our stamping first. So again, I'm going to grab my Smoky Slate, and I'm going to stamp my gumboots just over here to one side. Okay, just hold that down for a couple of seconds so that that ink saturate into my paper. So there's my gumboots there. I didn't mention the green that I'm using. So the green that I'm using is my Granny Apple green. So I really wanted these cards to be nice and bright. So we're going to stamp our stems and leaves down the bottom here in our Granny Apple green. And then we're going to stamp our flowers in our Fresh Freesia. Okay, so that's all the stamping for that. And now we're going to get my mini cut and emboss machine, and we're going to cut these out. So let me just pop these all to one side so I can bring in my mini cut and emboss. So this is a really great tool, and this is on special at the moment, so you can get this with 20% off. And again, you will find that on my website, in my shop, and you can purchase that and some selected stamp sets and dies as well. So it's not just the mini that's on special, but also the a selected range of dies will also have your 20% off. So I've just cut that in half because what I want to do is die cut my boots first. So that there's my die. Hoping I can line this up so you can actually see what I'm doing. So let me just take that back a little bit. Okay. There's our die. We're going to place our die on top. Now you could also use a small piece of washi tape or something like that if you want to hold that in place while you're cutting. But I think I can just pop that on top very gently and hold that down, and that should be okay with cutting that. Let's just let me move that. Everything decided to move. It's always a good idea to hold this handle just to hold everything down, because this is a much lighter machine than the big one, so it doesn't have as much weight in it to hold it down on its own. So while you're rolling it through, hold that handle. So there we go. There's our boots there, so we can pop that over in there, and we can grab our other dies for our tulips and stems and leaves. So again, I'm just going to layer this on top. Now these dies are really great. They hug that outside edge really well. Pop this one on top down here as well. Sometimes you have to spend a little bit of time just checking before you run it through. Pop my plate on top and run that through. Again, as I said before, just hold the handle just to make sure everything stays nice and firm. And take that out the other side. Now I'm just going to move this out of the road. And let's have a look at this one. So we removed our dies, and there's our stems and our flowers cut. So we're now ready to put this card together. So I'm going to leave this here for a moment because we do have a little bit more stamping to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my card front here, and I'm going to work out where we're going to stamp our sentiment. So I know on here that my boots are going to sit around about there, probably about that position there, so I can stamp my sentiment over here. So they're not glued down as yet. All I'm doing is just leaving them there just so I can position where my sentiment is going to go. Just hold that down again for a few seconds, and there we are. Beautiful. So that's all our stamping. So I'm going to remove this for the moment, and I'm going to bring in our mat. Now our mat is just a little bit bigger. So as I said before, our card front is 10 centimeters. Our card front is 9.7 centimeters by 14.1, and our mat is just that little bit bigger. Now I've done something wrong here, which doesn't surprise me. Let me just check my measurements. Okay, so this card front here should be 9.7, and we need to make it a little bit narrow. I didn't cut it at 9.7, so let's just trim that down to 9.7, and I'm going to take this off the top by 14.1. There you go. These are fantastic trimmers, really good for cutting these little pieces off. So that's still going to work fine on there. Now this here is now 5 millimeters narrower. So if I lay that on top of that, I should have a little bit of edge of color all the way around. So my mat is 10 centimeters by 14.4, and my card top is 9.7 by 14.1, and it looks like I have got a little bit of ink on there. Let me see if I've got... Okay, let me just open this up. Sometimes you can use an eraser to very gently, because it's not it's not very dark. It's just lightly there. So I just want to have a look and see whether I can remove a little bit of that. This doesn't always work, but sometimes it can. Otherwise, what you do is you just flip your cardstock over and do it on the other side. Okay, let's just have a look. Just see if that... Sometimes it could be not so much. Yep, that's just... It's still there a little bit, but I have lightened it a bit, so I'm not going to really worry about that. I think that is going to be fine. Always good to keep some baby wipes on hand, just in case you get that little bit of ink on your fingers. And just remember, as I said before, if you make a mess, you can turn it over and do it on the other side. Now I'm using multi-purpose glue here, and I'm just going to add that all the way around. I'm not going too close to my edges because I don't want the glue to ooze out. But the beauty of using the glue, it allows me to have a little bit of slip to make sure that I can slip this into place before it's dry, and that everything is going to be straight. So I'm just going to rub that on the back, and that's just allowing the glue to spread. Put the lid on that so it doesn't dry out. So now let's start building up some of this card. So what we can do, actually what I might do is pop it on its card base first. So fold that and then just burnish that with my bone folder. Get rid of that rubbish there. And we're going to glue that straight on top of that. Sorry, I said there was 5 mil difference between these two. There's not. There's 3 mils difference. There's 5 mils difference to the main card base. So, getting my measurements all mixed up today. Oh, Michelle, what am I doing? Okay. Let's pop that onto there. Again, just got that few minutes with the slip just to get all that nice and even. And just again, I'm just going to rub the inside of that just to make sure that all that glue is flattened. So there's our card front, and we're going to use some dimensionals. Now we have 2 different sizes in our dimensionals. We have our regular dimensionals, and then you can buy the mini dimensionals, and we're going to use both on this card. So I'm going to pop around about 5 dimensionals on these boots. I want 1 on each boot end, boot top, and then I'm just going to pop 1 in the middle just to make sure it doesn't sort of sink in that middle area. Peel those backings off. Our weather forecast today was for storms, but it's beautiful outside. So whether we'll get storms later on tonight or not, I don't know. Okay, so there's our boots. So that's just raised up a little bit, sitting on top of those dimensionals. And now we're going to add our stems and our leaves. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm not actually going to put any dimensionals on this. I sort of tossed up about whether to glue it straight down, but I do like the idea they look like they're coming out of the top of the boots. So I'm going to pop a little bit of glue just along that top area, or the bottom, just on the bottom edge of our stems. So just along there. And then I'm just going to place some glue along this just underneath where the stems take off, because what I want to do is I'm actually going to sit those stems on top of the boots, but I'm going to glue them down onto the front of our card there. So they're actually going down at a very slight angle, but that way they actually look like they're coming out of the boots. Now this is where we're going to use our minis. So they're very, very tiny, and you can fit them behind the head of the flowers. Now here we're going to put one at each end, and I'm just going to use 4 of them. I'm going to pop one just right there and one more on that one. Peel off our backs here. Now if you are watching this via YouTube, you could press the subscribe button, so then you'll be notified each time I'm on. And of course you can always go back and watch the replays from there as well. So I'm just going to sit those tulip heads just there on top of those stems, and that's our second card. So that's just taking it up one more notch. So let's just bring in the other card so you can see. So we've started off with quite a very basic card, and then we've taken it up one more notch by adding the die cuts and by adding a mat underneath. So now we're going to take it up one more step again. So let me just remove these cards, and I'm going to bring the next card in. So here we are. Now this is a card really for somebody who wants to take their stamping up that next level. And in Stampin' Up we call this Avid. So I've added more product to this. So we've still got our card base, we've still got our mat, we've still got our card front, we've still got our die cuts. So exactly the same as what we started in this card. But this time what I've done is I've added some texture to my card front here. So I've used the time worn type 3D embossing folder to give us a little bit of texture to this card. I've also added some ribbon and a bow, and I've also added these lovely coloured diamantes on here as well, just to give it that little bit more bling. So as we go, we can add these things. So, and with this card also too, what I've done is I've added an insert into our card. So with the other cards we didn't do an insert, but this one I've just taken it up that little bit more and added an insert. So let me bring in all the products we need to do this card, and we'll work on this one together as well. So here we are. I've got all my cardstock here. So again, I've got my card base in my thick basic white, a whisper white, sorry. No, basic white. Whisper white was what we used to have, and it's been our basic white. Okay, so that's our thick basic white. I've just folded that up in half and burnished that line there. So here I have my mat, which is going to go on the front of my card. Then I've got my piece of cardstock. Now let me just see if I cut this down. I don't think I did. So I've got to cut that down. So let's do that now while we think about it. So we'll move this out of the road and let's cut this down a bit extra. So it has to be at 9.7 by 14.1. So there we go. We've fixed that up. So now we've got our card base, our card mat, our card front. And then we have our insert. Now the insert, I've cut this to 8.5 centimeters by 14.4. And then I've got a strip. Now I said before that this designer series paper came in a 6x6. So basically this is just slightly smaller than my 6x6 because I've cut it down. But what I've done, this piece here, I've just used what was left over. So I probably could cut this down a bit further, but I'm not worrying about it. It was just a piece that was left over. So I've cut this piece out and I'm left with this bit left over. So I've got this piece, which is about 5 centimeters wide, and it's the 14.4, and it's going to go around about there to give me an extra 1.5 centimeters to bring that out to your 10 centimeters. So there are the pieces that we need. So again, we're going to pop our card base over to one side. Actually, all those pieces over to one side because we just need to do our stamping, and we need to do a bit of stamping on this piece as well. So let me grab my extra piece of cardstock, my foam mat, and let's do our stamping. So we're going to use exactly the same colours as we've used before. So we're going to grab our smoky slate, ink that up, and we're going to stamp our boots. We're going to grab our Granny Apple Green. We're going to stamp, ink's nice and even on that, stamp our leaves and our stems. But this time I'm also going to take this piece, which is our insert piece, and I'm also going to stamp our stems and leaves on this, but I'm taking the edge of my stamp off my cardstock. So just slightly off. So it's coming off the paper there. Okay. So that's why it's good to have a piece of scratch paper underneath. And then we're going to grab our fresh freesia. And we're going to stamp our lovely flower heads. So since I've got this piece here, I'll do this one first. Make sure that's inked up nice and well. Line them up. Remember, you can see through your stamp, so you can see where you're lining them up. And we're going to stamp that down there. So that's our insert done. And we're going to stamp another set. And I decided before, when I was waiting to come live, I'm actually going to stamp a third one of these. I'm going to change this card up just a fractionally more. So let's just see how we go. So I'm stamping off 2 there. So just had an idea while I was waiting for the live to start. So we're going to bring in our mini die cut. Now we don't need any of these stamps here. We still need our sentiment. So I'm actually going to move these right out of my road. Pop them over there. I'll clean them a little while later. And we're going to bring in our mini cut and emboss here. Again, whoops, don't need that. I'm just going to separate these so I can, probably cutting that a little bit fine, but that's okay. And I'm going to cut that away as well. So let's cut our boots to start with. So let's grab that die. Now if I used my bigger machine, I probably could have put more of this through at once. Must be a breeze going through the house. My door is creaking, or the cat's trying to get in. One of the two. Okay, let's check that. Probably had it a little bit out, but that's still fine. I'm still happy with that. So let's now die cut these ones. So bring that machine in again. Oops, need to get my die going the right direction. Just bring it up so you can actually see what I'm doing. Sometimes I think I should have a buzzer that you guys can buzz me every time I go off screen. Okay, let's pop that on top. Yep, that's cut beautifully. Get rid of that. And we're going to cut 2 more, but I'm going to have to do these probably individually because I think I've stamped them a little bit too close. Let me have a look. Yeah, I think my dies are just going to be slightly too close to each other, so bear with me one moment. Let's pop this one through. Oh, that might be right. I was just a little bit worried there that my die had slipped a bit, but I think that is fine. There we go. And we've got one more to do. Line all that up. And pop that through. Excuse me. Whoops. Just cold there. There we go. So that is all our die cutting done. Those away over there. And let me just pop these dies back in their box before I misplace them. Now eventually I will put a piece of magnet in there so these all can be held, but for the moment they can just sit there. They sit all together and the box is closed. So there's all our bits and pieces all die cut, and I'm going to show you why I've got 2 of these in a little while. And now we need to bring in our card front again. Where did I put them? Oh golly, I haven't done anything. They should be sitting here, right there, right in front of me. That's right. Okay, so we're going to adhere. No, we're not going to adhere because we're going to emboss. Before we emboss, what we have to do is we have to stamp our sentiment, because it is very difficult to stamp after on a rough surface. You're not going to get it all. So you're better off stamping and then embossing afterwards. So again, I need those boots just to work out where I'm going to pop them. But this time, because I'm going to put ribbon, I actually want my sentiment to be up slightly higher. So that's basically where that's going to sit. But my sentiment is going to go a little bit higher than what we've had before to make room for that ribbon. So it's going to go just there like so. Okay, so let's pop all of that away. No, didn't get any ink on that. Good. So now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to bring in my large embossing machine, and I'll tell you why I'm going to do that. So this is the big one. This is the mother of them all. So this is the Stampin' Up! Large cut and emboss machine. And Stampin' Up! Do bring out embossing folders that will fit in our mini, but quite a few of them fit in our large machine. Now your mini really only cuts something about 3 inches wide, and 3 inches in centimeters would be around about 7.5 to 8 centimeters. And our front of our card base is actually a little bit bigger. It's that 9.5 centimeters, 8.5 centimeters. So it won't fit through that, and neither will this. So we're going to be using our big machine to do our embossing. So I've got the 2 plates that we need for our embossing, which is our plate number 1 and our plate number 4. Now when you get these machines, you do get these plates all with them, and the plates are all numbered. And on the top of this plate here is all the instructions and telling you what the sandwich makeup is you need for each one. So with this one here, we don't need the Perspex plates. We just need plate 4, which is going to give us the extra height that we need to run our embossing folder through. So I'm putting my plate 1 down. I'm going to grab my embossing folder, add my stamped piece of cardstock inside, but I'm not taking it right up to the top because the embossing folder image doesn't go all the way to the top. So I'm just keeping a little bit from the top, and you always put your folded edge through first, going through your cut and emboss machine. Popping my plate number 4 on top of that, and then we're just going to wind that through. Never force anything through on your cut and emboss machine. If it's a little bit tight, then take it out and just reposition everything and try again. If it's still too tight, then you've got too much thickness in there. So just be very careful, because otherwise, if you're trying to shove through too much, like trying to do 2 or 3 layers of cardstock through at once, you could be doing some damage to your machine, and you don't want to do that. I mean, these machines cost a lot of money, and we want to look after them. So there's my embossing folder with my cardstock in between. Let's take out that, and we're left with this beautiful embossed image. Now I'm not quite sure whether you can see that on there where there's too much glare, but it's left with beautiful textured image on that piece. So now what we're going to do is we're going to adhere that onto our mats, the same as what we've done before, except that now we've added some texture. And I really love texture. I think a card front with a bit of extra texture on it with an embossing folder just really adds a little bit of finish to your card. So I sometimes, if I'm just using a plain cardstock, whether it be a basic white or one of your other colors, if it's just very, very plain, just adding that little bit of texture can just give you an added edge. So we're going to pop some adhesive on the back here. Again, not going too close because we don't want it to ooze through. So far we're just we're copying what we've done on the other card. Rub that on the back just to make sure that glue inside there is spread nicely. Now we're going to add some ribbon. So one of the beauties with Stampin' Up are really, really clever in the fact that all their ribbons and their cardstocks and their inks and everything all works too well together. So this is your Fresh Freesia in a ribbon, and you have your Fresh Freesia in your ink and your Fresh Freesia in your Designer Series paper. So everything coordinates. And that's one of the reasons I really love Stampin' Up, and I think it just gives them a really good edge against a lot of other companies. So I'm just going to cut this piece of ribbon here just a bit wider than my card front. And I'm going to use my seal. I'm going to flip this over. Now that's my sentiment there. That's the bottom of my card here. And I'm just going to line this up. That bottom edge I want at, there's 20 centimeters, and you've got a dark line on my grid here. So I'm using that as my guide, my center. I'm actually lining up the edge here with about 25 centimeters because I want my ribbon being sitting on around about that 20 centimeter mark, if that makes sense. So I'm going to have my ribbon sitting in around here. So I'm going to take my seal, and I'm just going to put a little piece of adhesive there and another little piece there. And I'm just using the grid paper just to help me line up and get my ribbon nice and straight. So I've got that lined up at 25. I've put a bit of adhesive there at around about the 20 centimeter mark, and I'm just going to pop that on there. So I'll just pop that on top of the glue at that 20 centimeter mark. I'm going to wrap that around. Now I'm not pulling that tight because I don't want to curve my card front. Line it back up at 20 centimeters. Just bring that just sort of firm but not tight. And then I'm just going to fold that over again at that 20 centimeter mark. And that's going to be a relatively straight line across there. So now we've got a piece of ribbon on there. And we're going to add some more adhesive because we're going to stick this down now to our card front. And I'm not taking it over the ribbon, I just go either side of the ribbon because there's still a little bit of adhesive sticking out on either side. So here's our card base again. Pop that on there. Remembering I've still got that time because I'm using the multi-purpose glue just to slip that into place. Open it up and just give that a nice little rub inside just to spread that glue. And there's our card front there. So now we're going to do our decorating with our bits and pieces on here. So again, we're going to grab my dimensionals and add them onto the back of my boots. We can stick those down. That around about there. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the glue on the back of my stems that I've done in the last card. So I'm just putting a little bit of glue along the bottom and just a bit of glue just there underneath my stems. Sit that on top and then press that down there. Now we're going to grab one of these sets of flowers. We're going to pop some mini dimensionals on the back. Same as what we did before. So I'm popping about 4 of these on. And then we're going to pop those on top there just like that. Now what I thought we could do with this extra one that I've got here, I'm just going to grab a finer pair of scissors and I'm going to cut that one there and I'm going to cut that one just through there. So I'm just breaking that up into 3 little parts. I'm just going to take that little sharp edge off there. So now what we can do, we can have a look at these flowers, work out which ones are sitting forward. So this boot here is forward to this boot. So these stems here, in some respects, are forward, say maybe to those ones. So I'm going to take one of these that matches what's there, which is this little piece here. I'm going to add some dimensionals onto the back of that. So I'm going to add 2 on there. So I'm even stepping this up now a bit further than when I did to that last card. Take the backing off that one. And I'm going to layer this one on top of that. So it's got a little bit more height. These ones, the next 3 flowers there, I think are sitting backwards or a bit further back, and then these ones are sitting forwards again. So I'm going to leave those. I'm not going to use that piece, but I'm going to use this one, put a couple of extra dimensionals on the back of this one as well. Now, I didn't quite get that little bit of edge off that one, so I'm just going to cut that around a little bit. We're going to pop this one on top there. So what I've done there is I've actually raised the height of these 2 sets of flowers. There's 4 flowers there. They're now sitting forward to those ones there. So it just adds that little bit extra dimension. So now we still need to add a bow. So I've got my bow maker here. Now remember, you can get one of these bow makers. You can purchase $50 worth of product through me, and I will send you out one of my bow makers. So I'm going to take my piece of ribbon. It goes over the top, across those 2 legs there, down underneath, and we're going to come back, go through that hole there. Whoops, always wants to pop out. Pull that through, bring it back up through the center, and then tie that off in a knot. It is as simple as that. And this is just a small little bow. It's only probably about 2 centimeters in width. And you just do a little half knot there and tie, pull that nice and firmly, slip that off your bow maker, and there's your bow. So I'm going to cut the tails off that in a moment, but I do need my glue dots. I'm going to pop a glue dot onto the back of that bow, and then pop that just there. Now I probably could have had my sentiment down a little bit or had my ribbon up a little bit higher, but that's okay. It still looks fine. Just not happy with the way that that is just sitting there. That's fine. And we're just going to cut that at an angle there. Cut this one off at an angle. So there's that. Now we need to do our card insert. So let me pop that to one side. So there's our stamped insert. There's our piece of designer series paper. And I'm going to use my snail again. And I'm just going to run some snail down this edge. There, yep, that worked. So again, I'm going to line this up here on that 20 centimeter edge here. This is the edge that's got the adhesive on it. So I hope you can see that. I'll bring it up a bit higher. So I'm sort of lining it up with that edge there. I know this is going to be, has to finish at about 2 centimeters, or 10 centimeters, sorry. So it needs to be about 1.5. So I'm going to be using my grid paper to make sure everything is all nice and straight. So I've got this edge on my 20 centimeter mark and this edge here on my 30 centimeter mark. And I'm going to lay that down there and making sure everything's lined up and it's not at the top. So let's see if I can just lift that a little bit. So let's just try that again. So line that up, and take that to that 1.5. There we go, pretty close. So you do have a bit of excess cardstock in there, but that's fine. We're just going to add some glue onto the back here. Grab our card. And then we're going to pop that on the inside there again, using that glue and the extra time we've got there just to line everything up. Perfect. Got a nice rub. And there's the inside of our card. And we've got one thing left to do. So, where have I put them? Somewhere safe here on my desk are these, and they're the 20, 21 to 23 in colour jewels. So we're going to use some of these to add a little bit of bling to our card. So I've got some here in a strip, and these are in colours, so they match what we've got here. So I'm going to grab my take a pick tool. So this is the Fresh Freesia, and I'm going to use one big one and pop it just about here. And then you've got some little ones down here. I just want one tiny little one just to add just above there. And then take that one, which I think could be slightly, oh no, it might be about the same. Actually, I might use a bigger one. Grab one of those bigger ones. And that one is going to go down here. Now, I've put that in a triangle. Should always do odd numbers because it looks, excuse me, more appealing to the eye. But also, too, if your form's a triangle, it's your eye is drawn to whatever is inside that triangle. So it's really bringing your eye back to your sentiment there. So there you go. There's my last card. So now we have got, we go back to our beginning. I've got a beginner's card. We've got a card for those that are just wanting to step it up and do that little bit extra. And then we have another card which is really geared towards that person that really wants to take their card making up to that next level. So from here, you can actually keep going up and adding more things. We could have added a bit of colour to the background, but it's just stepping it up and adding that little bit more. So I hope you've enjoyed my live today, and I hope you've learned something from that. So what I'm going to do is just going to take you back to me again on the camera. So here I am again. So I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope you can come and join me again next Friday when we look at something else. But this is just a really great project for someone, and this stamp set is really great for that beginner stamper or that intermediate stamper who just wants to sort of make a quick card, but then always really good too because you can take that up to right up to the next level. So thank you again for joining me. I hope you have a lovely day. Enjoy your weekend. I have heard we are supposed to be getting, as I said earlier, storms today and rain over this weekend. Fingers crossed. They sometimes can be wrong, and we hope you have a nice day. So take care. Thanks, Looney, for watching, and I'll see you next week at Friday at 1 o'clock. Bye for now.